At my birthday party, my parents didn't buy me a single gift. My sister got a diamond bracelet instead. When I asked why, my dad snorted, "You should be grateful we even let you come." Everyone laughed as I sat alone with paper plates. But the next day, my bank alerted me to a massive transfer that changed everything. "You're lucky you're even here," my dad muttered under his breath, stuffing a napkin into his shirt collar as I stood awkwardly near the buffet table. I blinked. "Excuse me?" He didn't bother repeating himself. Instead, he focused on Sierra, my younger sister, as she held up a glittering diamond bracelet with a wide, beaming smile. My mom clasped her hands together like she'd witnessed a miracle. "This is just stunning," Sierra said, twisting her wrist to catch the light. "It's exactly like the one Meghan Markle wore." They were all gathered around her, neighbors, cousins, even my old piano teacher from elementary school who hadn't recognized me until I reintroduced myself. No one asked about me. No one brought up that it was my birthday. I stood at the edge of the group holding a paper plate with a sagging piece of sheet cake, store-bought and stale. I'd driven from Philadelphia to Morristown just for this. For what? To feel invisible in the middle of people who shared my DNA? I didn't even get a candle. The car ride back was quiet, save for the low hum of the highway. My eyes blurred with tears, not because I expected anything different, but because a part of me still hoped. I'd long accepted that Sierra was the favorite. She always had been, more outgoing, more charming, the one who gave my parents something to brag about. I was the quiet one, the reader, the artist who didn't get a real job until I was almost 30. That label had stuck. I was used to being overlooked. But there was something about watching a crowd of people cheer for my sister on my birthday that felt like a nail in the coffin. I had planned to sleep the next day. I'd taken time off work, hoping I could relax and maybe shake off the humiliation. Instead, I was woken up at 8:17 a.m. by a bank notification, "Chase alert, incoming wire transfer, $850,000." At first, I thought it was a mistake or worse, fraud. But the memo attached read, "From Aunt Marla's estate, final distribution." I stared at the message for a long time. My aunt? I hadn't seen her in over 2 decades. She'd moved to Maine when I was a kid and cut off contact with the rest of the family after falling out with my mom. I was the only one who ever visited her when I was little. I remember being 9 years old and spending a summer with her. I helped her water her tomato plants every morning, and we'd sit on the porch swing in the evening, drinking lemonade and swatting at mosquitoes. She lived a quiet life, but she'd treated me with kindness. I had no idea I had left such an impression on her. Later that day, her lawyer called. "She left everything to you, Rosalind," he said. She said, "Give it to the one they always ignored." Her words. I sank into my kitchen chair, numb. In addition to the money, I inherited her house in Camden, a white, shingled cottage overlooking the bay. She left me her journals, a vintage camera collection, and one final handwritten letter. "Rosalind, you saw me. You were kind. You asked me questions no one else bothered to ask. This is for you. Live boldly. Love freely. Don't wait for their approval. You never needed it." It hit me like a wave. All these years, I had been trying to earn something from people who couldn't, or wouldn't, see me. Within 2 weeks, I gave my notice at the small design firm where I worked. My boss, Nora, blinked in surprise. "You sure?" she asked. "I'm sure," I said, smiling. "I've got other plans." I used some of the money to rent a small studio space in Fishtown, a creative neighborhood in Philly. I registered a business license and launched my own graphic design firm. It was modest at first, just me, one laptop, and a refurbished espresso machine, but it was mine. I hired 2 other women within a few months, both incredibly talented, both overlooked at their previous jobs for being too quiet or not assertive enough. We called the company Underdog Design Company. My aunt's house in Camden became something else, too, a retreat for creatives, a sanctuary for women rebuilding their lives. Writers escaping burnout, artists escaping chaos, and a single mom escaping her ex-husband's shadow, each of them found rest there. Sierra, of course, found out. I got a text 3 weeks after the transfer. "I heard about Aunt Marla's estate. That money should have gone to Mom. You're just a phase. You'll screw it up like always." I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without replying. The months rolled by, and with every passing week, I grew further from the version of myself that used to beg for scraps of affection from my family. I no longer checked my phone hoping for a message from my mom, or scanned social media to see what Sierra was up to. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who had already decided I wasn't worth noticing. Instead, I poured myself into Underdog Design Company. Our client list started to grow, small local businesses at first, then a few nonprofit organizations. Word got around. People appreciated our clean, compelling visuals and the way we listened, really listened, to their needs. We didn't talk about disruption or scalability like the guys in suits did. We talked about community, storytelling, and authenticity. And people responded. One afternoon, I was sketching a mock-up for a food co-op when I received a letter in the mail. A real letter, not a bill or a flyer. The return address was my parents' house. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a stiff card with "Thinking of you" embossed on the front. The handwriting was my mother's. "Rosalind, we were surprised to hear about the inheritance. I'm sure Marla meant well, but this whole thing has created quite a stir. We would appreciate it if you didn't flaunt it too much. Sierra is still struggling to find her footing. It would mean a lot if you considered helping her out. She's always looked up to you, even if she didn't say it. Love, Mom." I let out a short, dry laugh. There it was. Not an apology. Not a recognition of what had happened at the birthday party, or years of being sidelined. Just a warning not to flaunt it and a subtle request to fund Sierra's life. It was absurd. It would have been hilarious if it hadn't been so predictable. I didn't reply. A few weeks later, I received an email from Sierra. The subject line was, "Let's talk." I opened it, more out of curiosity than interest. "Roz, okay. I know things have been messed up. I get it. I've been trying to make my own way out here and it's been hard. Mom and Dad never really get what I do, and they're always pressuring me to be perfect. That bracelet wasn't even from them, it was something I bought myself because I was tired of being broke. What happened at your birthday was awful. I should have said something. I didn't." I froze. I know that doesn't excuse anything, but I wanted you to know I'm not proud of it. If there's a chance we can talk, I'd like that. Sierra, I sat with that email for a long time. Was it real remorse? Or was she just reaching out now that she saw how much I had? I honestly didn't know. And maybe it didn't matter. I wasn't the same person anymore. I didn't need her validation. Or my parents. Still, I didn't delete it. Not replying didn't feel right either. So I left it in my inbox, unread but marked with a star. A maybe. Meanwhile, the cottage in Camden began to take on a life of its own. I opened up a small application process for people looking to spend a weekend or a few weeks there, writers with deadlines, women going through divorces, artists who'd lost their muse. It became a word-of-mouth kind of place, with no website and no social media. You had to know someone who'd stayed there. It became sacred. There was a quiet joy in that house. A stillness that came with the crashing ocean and creaking floorboards. I left the journals Aunt Marla kept on a shelf in the living room. Visitors read them like scripture. Her handwriting was small and neat, full of recipes, quotes, poems, and small observations like, "June 5th, the wind today smells like rosemary." People left their own notes, too. A logbook of sorts. I read every one when I visited, and every entry reminded me why I'd chosen to step away from the family orbit. I'd created something. Something real. In the background, my parents tried harder to reinsert themselves into my life. I got birthday cards the next year, late, and signed only by Mom and Dad. I got a message from my dad asking if I wanted to meet for coffee sometime just to talk. But they never mentioned the party. Or the bracelet. Or the way they had treated me for over 3 decades. You can't heal a wound without first acknowledging it exists. And they just didn't. So I didn't reply. Months passed, and I grew into my new life like a plant finally given sunlight. My days were full, design work during the week, creative retreats in Camden on weekends. I had never been this busy, this independent, or this grounded. Not once did I regret walking away from the people who made me feel small. But as the summer turned to fall, something interesting happened. I received an invitation in the mail, cream-colored cardstock, gold-embossed lettering. "You are cordially invited to the 40th wedding anniversary of Dominic and Frances." I hadn't heard from my parents in nearly a year, and suddenly they were throwing an extravagant event at a golf club in Princeton. The invitation included a note, "Hope you can come. We'd love to see you. Bring your business cards. We hear you've been doing well." Ah. There it was. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted a photo op proof that their daughter, once the family embarrassment, had turned into someone worth showing off. It wasn't love, it was leverage. And I decided, for once, I'd give them exactly what they wanted. I RSVP'd yes. On the night of the party, I wore a dark navy pantsuit tailored to perfection. No sequins. No frills. Just power in the form of simplicity. I brought 3 guests, my 2 business partners, and a former client turned close friend, a well-known author whose book we had designed the cover for. She had just hit the New York Times bestseller list. The venue was as gaudy as I expected: chandeliers, ice sculptures, a string quartet in the corner. My parents looked older but just as unaware. They lit up when they saw me. "Rosalind," my mother gushed, arms wide open. I let her hug me, and smiled politely. "You look professional," my dad said, nodding with shallow approval. "Thank you," I said. "I brought friends." The room began to buzz. Sierra arrived late, wearing something silver and tight, her hair in an elaborate updo. She looked around and narrowed her eyes when she saw me. My entourage. My calm. "You're here," she said, walking over. "I am," I replied. She glanced at the people beside me, recognized the author, and her smile faltered. "You've been busy." I nodded. "Very." We were seated at a table near the front. My name was printed incorrectly on the place card, Rosalind. Of course. Dinner was served, speeches were made, and then my father took the microphone. "We're so proud of the family we've built," he said, pausing for effect. "Especially our daughters. Sierra, always dazzling. And Rosalind, who started her own little design company." There was scattered applause. And then it was my turn. "Would you like to say a few words?" someone asked, thrusting the mic into my hand. I stood. Looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, many not. And I smiled. "I'm glad to be here," I began. "It's been an eventful year. My team and I built a firm that now works with clients nationwide. We've opened a retreat space for women recovering from personal and professional setbacks. And next year, we'll be launching a foundation in my aunt's name to support women in the arts." There was a small gasp. I continued, voice steady. "Some of you knew my Aunt Marla. Many of you didn't. She was my mother's sister, estranged, overlooked, dismissed. Much like I was. When she passed, she left her entire estate to me. Not because I asked. But because I listened. Because I showed up. That's something I've learned: presence matters more than proximity. Kindness counts, even when no one notices." I paused. I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned. Especially from those who tried to teach me that love had to be earned. It doesn't. With that, I handed the microphone back and sat down. The silence in the room stretched. Sierra stared at her plate. My mom avoided my eyes. My dad took a sip of wine like it could wash down what I had just said. But it didn't. It was quiet, like snow falling on a roof. No dramatic scenes. No screaming. Just a slow realization that the power had shifted. I was no longer the outsider hoping to be invited in. I was the woman who built her own door. After the party, several guests came up to me. They asked for business cards. Some wanted to collaborate. Others just said thank you. I didn't see Sierra again for another 6 months. When I did, she was sitting across from me at a women's entrepreneurship panel. I was a speaker. She was an attendee. She waited until the end to approach. "You're really doing it," she said. "I am." She nodded. "Maybe one day we can talk." "Maybe," I said. And then I walked away, no bitterness, no fire. Just the quiet, satisfying burn of self-worth fully realized.